Hello and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your new host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg-Shaped, and I'm very excited to be joined by the one and the only Mr. Editor himself, Gavin Harper. How are you, sir?
Very well, Bruce. Thanks very much for joining us, and I'm delighted to have you stepping into the presenter's chair. That's certainly saves me a job as a newspaper man. So good to have you on, and I'll stick to put my words online and give my views here.
Nice. Looking forward to it. It's been an interesting time, and of course, it's £1 for 6 months to subscribe to the Scotland Rugby News, or that's the introductory offer, £12 for 12 months. So get involved and you can read all about it. So, Gav, we are going to start with the team that's already finished. Let's talk about Edinburgh. It's been an interesting season, my man.
It certainly has, and it's what a way to finish. That was pretty terrible. And Treviso last weekend, it was not what anybody I think expected, and a really disappointing way for them to finish, not to make the playoffs. I think Grant Gilchrist said it has to be considered a failure on their part, and ultimately, we'll probably talk about this, but bonus points have really cost them. I had a look back at through the season and actually was struggling to pick out games they had lost that had cost them. There was a game they won in Cardiff a few weeks ago. They scored 3 tries and they just missed out on a 4th try at the end. That 1 point would have put them in the top 8. Might not have given them Champions Cup, but it would have got them in the playoffs and they would have had a crack at Sunday. Fair enough, they would have gone to Munster away, which is, up there with the hardest challenges in rugby. But to finish the way they did, they'll be really disappointed because I think with 3 or 4 games to go, it was in their hands.
It's always a tough one because you want the fairy tale at the end, like you want WP and you want Big Bill to go out on a high. All right, they might not have made the playoffs, but to finish on a high. I remember as a kid the last game that Liverpool played in front of the Old Cop and they got beat by Norwich, and you think, like that stuck in my head because it was a rubbish ending for Bill and WP. You're thinking, right, blue sky, sunshine, game in Italy. Let's go out on a high. I mean, those two have been phenomenal for the club. I think Bill's sitting in the top 3 for positive carries in the WRC this season. So, I mean, he's still churning out performances.
Yeah, I mean, like both of them have just been unreal. And the fact that, they just turn up every week and, Bill particularly, whether there's Scotland internationals there or not, he just gives you that like 8, 9 out of 10 every single week. And I can't remember in all the years of watching Edinburgh with Bill Matta and the team, him ever really giving you having a bad game or, making loads of mistakes or anything. He's just always been like Mr. Consistent, totally reliable. They'll really, really miss him, I think, next year. Magnus has got massive shoes to fill coming back. And like WP, I remember being there for Chunk's last game, and it was a bit the same. It was like, I think they played Dragons inside Murrayfield. There was maybe 3,000 or 4,000 there. And I remember thinking, is this really the way Chunk's going to finish? But actually on the night, they played pretty well. I think he played reasonably well from memory. But like WP will be so disappointed that, and it kind of sums Edinburgh up, that like they've got such a good team, such a good squad on paper, but like they never get over that kind of final hurdle.
It's tough though. That's one of those things that you always hope going through these things they're going to learn. So, and that's the media talk. You must have heard this after every single game. Oh yeah, we're learning, we're going to make the improvements. And I speak to players and coaches after the game, and I get sometimes similar. But the team, the club has been through a massive transition. There's people getting a bit excitable saying it's time for the coaches to change. We've been through a lot of change. Cockers went. There wasn't a huge amount of planning time. Mike comes in, new coaches, different style, into the hive. There was a whole load of things in the mix there. And then, Mike stands down. There's a bit of, what happens now? Steve Dybin comes in. it's not been great. Gilco has been pretty honest, said we've got to look at it as a failure. I think Ben Vellacott sugarcoated it a wee bit more, but it has to get better next year, because if it's the same this time next year, then absolutely questions will be asked.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think that, like, to be asking, let's remember, Sean Everett came in and he wasn't even head coach. He was senior coach for the first half of the season.
I remember going up to St Andrews for the pre-season when he was only on a holiday, wasn't allowed to work, and they were doing their training, and he was just kind of walking about with his hands in his pockets, trying not to get involved because he wasn't allowed to do it.
Madness, like that's that must have been pretty frustrating for him. But that's probably the start of a frustrating first year, because actually he's come in, he's established himself as head coach, and like defenses win championships, and actually Edinburgh's defence has been okay. It's been better than their attack, and I'm maybe setting the bar a wee bit low there, but they'll build on their attack. Like, they've got the players to do it. They've obviously been like totally ravaged with injuries in the back three. They've really missed Darcy, because he just gives you that like total spark out of nothing. If they can get Darcy back fit, get Doohan more ball, and then Ben Healy with another season, and the competition of Ross Thompson, like, they've actually got all the makings of a really good side. So
and throw in Tuipulotu. That it'll be interesting to see what that sparks. I think you're right. I think like Ben Healy's top of everything: kicks, drop kick, kicking meters. His right boot has had a hell of a season, but I think even he's probably frustrated by what's going on and wants to play. And you hope, back to that bit of improvement, you hope that, right, we've set out our stall, we're able to kick, now it's time to build on that, and next season let's have a crack. And it was nice to see Jake Henry getting a contract extension. He's had a tough time. Harry Patterson, you missed out Boff. There's a lot in there that could have made a difference.
100%. And like you say, Tuipulotu might, he could, if he's half the player his brother is, he could be the total game changer for Edinburgh in the midfield.
I think the thing for me, though, is he's different from everything else that's there.
Exactly. And that's it. They've got something. They'll add something that they don't currently have. Matt Curry's had a brilliant season.
Class player.
And he thoroughly deserved the award he got at the end of season dinner. And actually, if he gets, a Scotland call-up for the summer, then there would be no questions asked at all. So I think it's a frustrating season. They should have finished in the top 8. They will kick themselves that they didn't. But the talk of getting rid of Sean Everett is definitely premature. I think he's come in, he's done a pretty decent job, all told, that disappointment aside. And I think, as you say, if we're still in the same situation in 12 months' time, yes, questions definitely should be asked. But after 1 year, Edinburgh don't need to start getting rid of another coach.
Nah, that to me that would just break my heart if we got into a cycle of give somebody a season and then we start again and try somebody else, because you don't just bring in a coach anymore. You bring in a coach and their team and their support and their whatever else. But do you know something? And I'm totally biased here. The atmosphere at the Hive has taken a massive jump up. You mentioned Chunk's last game there. Being in the big bowl wasn't really an advantage because opposition teams were getting to play on a big paddock, a great facility, but there wasn't anything to be intimidated by. Now, I'm not sure quite how much a crowd plays, but because in fact, my two favourites of the season, we lost both of them, Gloucester and Munster. I thought the atmospheres were packed. The opposition brought support. They were pretty vocal. That sparked up the Edinburgh support. I thought it was brilliant. The Hive, it's no means perfect, but it's been really good. We're almost in a point of we could do another 3,000 for those bigger games and have 10,000 folk round it. But that's been special this year. I think the Hive has come alive.
It really has. It's like, it makes such a difference, I think, to see the place full. It just creates that atmosphere. As you say, opposition teams are bringing decent support. That always helps. Yeah, the whole place has felt more positive, and it actually feels like we were down in London. We went to the Harlequins Glasgow game, and you get the same feel at the Stoop as you do now at the Hive. Whereas that was like Edinburgh rugby have been a million miles away from that for the last 15, 20 years. So actually, on that front, they've made great strides. I think I saw something a few weeks ago. They had it's like 100,000 fans
Yeah, that's right.
through the doors during the season, which is great, and you just hope that. Like I was chatting to Blair Kinghorn a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how totally rugby mad Toulouse is as a place, and Edinburgh's never going to be Toulouse, but if they can if the club can tap into that like rugby in the city, then and drag more folk along, then Edinburgh will be the better for it. But you're right. Like if you could get extra seats in the Hive, I would 100% rather that than sticking games back inside the big stadium, unless it's like Glasgow or whatever. When you're going to get 40,000.
You got to go for that. But the likes of Gloucester could probably have brought another 500, maybe 1,000. Yeah, and also the kickoff times. It's great to see there's more Friday night games in the new season fixture list, because to me that's an absolute gimme. Those were some of the best nights historically, because it was relentless. It was every Friday. Folk knew the score. You still had your whole weekend. You could be at club games on a Saturday. You could do your own. It just makes sense. So I'm delighted to see there's more Friday nights back. That's when it should be, I think.
I absolutely amen to that. I think you lose sight of, rugby traditionally has been 3 o'clock on a Saturday, but in my eyes, and I know in yours, that's when you should be standing on the touchline of your own club, putting a few quid behind the bar. And actually, if Edinburgh is 7:35 on a Friday night most weeks, then you can do that. And as you say, straight from work, straight to the Hive, and a decent night's rugby. It's not to be sniffed at.
There's also this is a whole other episode. But summer rugby, I mean, how good was Munster? It was blue sky. It was just, this is when we should be watching rugby. It was far, far more enjoyable.
Wasn't it just, I mean, that, I mean, the idea of give me that over a 6-3 on a cold, wet November's night, any day of the week. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get there eventually, but I think that's maybe a one topic for another day.
Yeah, that's another day. Right, let's go along the M8 to Glasgow, because they've still got it all to play for. It's obviously ruffled a few feathers by saying if they get through, they're going to end up playing at Murrayfield, which has caused a bit of stushy. But Glasgow they seem to do the best of what they've got, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. They're the antithesis of Edinburgh, in that even when Glasgow don't have the team on paper that you would look at and say, man to man, I'd pick all those Glasgow players. They just do the job. And actually, they didn't play very well against Zebre on Friday night. They were pretty lucky not to be further behind with 20 minutes to go, but they just saw it out. Like, they just found a way to win that. And actually, speaking to Kyle Rowe after the game, he said, we would be far better playing games like that in the run-up to knockout rugby than we would with Zebre coming here totally nothing to play for, and we beat them by 60. That serves Glasgow no purpose. So, they'll have to be a million times better than that when Stormers visit on Saturday night. And what a game that will be, by the way.
That's going to be a belter. Glasgow, there's so many players I look at Glasgow, and I think they go about business like Stafford McDowell. Like, you got to take your hat off to the kid. He's not a kid anymore, but I mean, what a player! And he has to be in the chat for a Scotland, Scotland tour and get in there. Johnny Matthews just can't stop scoring. Like, he's relentless, and he just the bit I love the most about Johnny Matthews is he just seems like he absolutely loves everything he does. Like, the energy and enthusiasm he's got. Like, he's gold, I think. When you've got guys like that who, right, nobody's talking about Johnny Matthews, being a lion. I mean, he's all over it. He's just, I think he's class. I think he's absolutely class.
And I think that energy is so infectious. Like him, Jack Dempsey, Stafford McDowell, Sione, they've all got that, like, they just seem to love what they're doing. Like, Dempsey must carry the ball 20 times almost every game he plays, and he's running over the top of folk. And when he gets, if he's on the end of a big tackle, he almost looks like he quite enjoys that side of it. I don't think we've got many players like that. Sione is a bit the same. He bumped somebody for one of the tries on Friday night.
He's different class. I
But,
think he's just got better and better and better.
Yeah, and he has. And I think the more he's settled here on and off the pitch, the better he's got. And to be honest, nobody would have expected him to be as good as he is when he came from Japan, virtually unknown. But he's up there with like Finn, Duhan, Xander, first names on the Scotland team sheet now. He's I think he's that good. And I think come this time next year, we could be talking about him being a Lion.
Yeah, I think so. And then the embarrassment of riches that they've got at scrum, like George Horn. I mean, sit down, Anton Dupont. Like George Horn, what a boy! Like talking to energy, he's one of those you just hate playing against boys like him. Like, sit down, you shouldn't be any good. You're 4 foot nothing. You're like, what are you up to? And he's just all over it. And he's scoring tries and he pops up all over the place. And he's always there. Like, go away. And he just winning. He's just always there. Then you've got Dobie, who, Scotland tour for Dobie, and then you got Ben Afshar clicking at his heels as well, saying, right, hang on, it's time for him. What a goal kicker he can be. Which I think is one of those things I used to say to players when I was coaching them. See, if you make yourself a goal kicker, you have to get picked. You have to get picked. And Greg Laidlaw did that. Greg Laidlaw became a relentless goal kicker, and you had to pick him. He was a very good player, but he was a world-class goal kicker. I think that's Ross Thompson coming along the road. I think is an interesting one, but the scrum half depth at Glasgow is pretty impressive.
And actually, when you think that at the start of this season, they also had Ali Price, who on the last Lions tour started 2 of the 3 tests. Like, the depth there is crazy, but it's almost too good. It's almost a problem because totally. You need the 3 of them playing all the time. Like, fair play to Sean Kennedy. He knows what he is at this stage of his career, and he is the 4th choice. But actually, you need him to be one stage further up, and somebody of those 3 you mentioned to go away somewhere else and play. But
Sean will be great for them because Sean will help them get better. And he's a niggle. Like, Sean's experience is gold, and he'll be supporting them and keeping them going. And I think Dobie and Ben have played out of position.
I think both played on the wing, and Dobie's played a fair bit on the wing actually, and not looked uncomfortable there. And like you say with the goal kicking thing, if you can make yourself versatile, play in another position. Actually, when it comes to a tight call, even for the bench, like, you're going to win that 50-50, particularly because Franco Smith goes 6'2" on the bench so often that he just gives them that wee bit more cover, and it saves them moving George, who I think is just like, it's the age-old thing everybody talks about with George Horn, but like, if you watch him once he's passed the ball, and that would be my thing for anybody that is watching this or listening. If you watch George Horn when he passes the ball and think, where is he going? 7 times out of 10 he ends up underneath the sticks. And folk are like, well, where did this guy come from?
That's what I mean. Anton Dupont runs the George Horn line.
That's it.
Like, sit down, Anton. We've got Georgie Horn. I think you're right though. The embarrassment of riches in Scotland's not always, but we've had an issue at 9 forever that we've had too many of them. At the one time, there's been purple patches of like Greg Oliver. What a guy he is, and we miss him dearly. But if he'd been playing now, he probably would have had a bundle of caps because it was at a time where he couldn't get off the bench. We had like getting in the South squad was difficult. Never mind getting in the Scotland squad.
Yeah.
And I feel we've kind of got that just now, and how are they going to get game time? But again, that's maybe another pod altogether. So come on then, I need you to stick your neck on the line here. Saturday night, what are we expecting?
We're expecting an absolute blockbuster. Stormers with everything to play for, a pack full of Springboks, World Cup winners, but Glasgow at Scotstoun, haven't lost there since last quarter final. I mean, I think it'll be tight as anything, but
just answer the question, would you?
Okay, Glasgow just. Glasgow just.
Glasgow just. Now, are you saying that because it's Scotland Rugby News, or are you saying that because that's what you genuinely think?
I'm saying that because that is hand on heart what I genuinely think, but I totally expect it to be like 38, 35, and like a completely mad game. I think if Glasgow have their way, they will not want that. They'll want like a pretty controlled, which is kind of strange saying that about Glasgow, but if you let the Stormers play, they can really rip teams to pieces. But nah, I'm saying that because that's what I think. So Glasgow just, and it'll be Glasgow away to Munster in the semi-finals.
That's like you can't do it easy. And the thing I feel about the URC, the teams like you sort of mentioned it earlier about Edinburgh and how didn't go well at the end. These teams are championship teams. Like as it gets closer and closer to the big dance, like Leinster just got another gear, Munster got another gear. It's going to be interesting to see, the South African teams. I just think that experience, that battle hardened. We've been here before, and it doesn't always come like that. Of course, it doesn't. That's what makes us love sport, because there's an unpredictable element to it. But you just have to think some of the experience is maybe just that edge.
That's it. And like I remember speaking to somebody, can't remember who, earlier in the season, and
Big
saying,
Dave, Big Dave,
yeah,
we Roger,
and saying, like the difference that, in fact, I tell you, I've remembered it was Ben Healy and asking him the difference that.
I'm going to check the facts with him, by the way. After this, I'm calling Ben and go, see earlier in the season, did Big Gav say this to you?
Right, you do that, because we definitely did have this conversation that Munster last year benefited so much from the fact that Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray, Tyg Byrne, Keith Earls, they'd all won stuff with Ireland. Fair enough, they might not have won loads with Munster, but they had won stuff with Ireland. They knew how to win these big games. They just could. They've been in. I want to say they've been in knockout rugby, and fans of Irish rugby will crucify me for that because of their World Cup record. But you know what I mean. They've been in these games and had those experiences. The South Africans have obviously got it with the World Cups. So it's a huge test for Glasgow at the weekend. But I think at Scotstoun, I think, is like, talk about the hive. Scotstoun has become a total fortress for Glasgow, and actually, when you turn up, some oppositions must think, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't what I expected. This team are top 4 of the URC, and we're playing in like a council complex, And
it's also a right pain in the tonsils to get to.
It is. And even
as my 60 quid parking ticket for about 3 seasons ago testifies, it had snowed and I parked. Thought it was fine. That's the story I'm telling anyway.
Well, I'll go one better than that. I once parked in there's a school round the corner, and it used to open for games, and I parked in there. And when I arrived back at my car, and I was working, so once we'd done all the post-match stuff, I arrived back at my car and discovered that the steward had left and locked my car in the car park till Monday. Nice. There was a few panicked phone calls to somebody at Glasgow who helped me out, but it is a pain to get to. So it'll be
it'd be class for Scottish rugby to have Glasgow progress, and that would be a massive scalp. Stormers in a knockout game.
100%, and do you know, it would be doubly amazing if Ospreys can pull off a result in against Munster, then actually Glasgow would be at home in the semi, and they've said this week that the home semi-final would be at Scotstoun, which would be would be amazing, and you would like to think that tickets would just go in a minute.
They disappear.
So that would be the dream scenario from this weekend. But I think Ospreys have got their work cut out at Thomond Park.
100%. Right, before we go on to Scotland, that's where I would kind of like Glasgow to be a bit niggly if they got that home semi-final and they only released about 25 tickets to Ospreys and just filled it with Glasgow. Just like, no, it's our home game.
Yeah.
Anyway, that would be mean. Right, Scotland tour, because we've not got long, and you said we were going to keep it to time, but you asked me to host, so that's been blown right out of the water. Scotland summer tour. I know. Brace yourself. This is going to take a while. Scotland tour: Canada, America, Chile, Uruguay. I suppose let's start. We're probably not going to go fully blown on this tour. Agree?
Agree. I think doing that 12 months out from a Lions tour, having at the end of a season that's included a World Cup, you've got to remember a lot of these guys have basically been in training or playing games for a year. So let's give some of them their slippers and say, do you know what? I think we've got this. I think there's some positions that is slightly different. Like Xander might have to go for part of it just purely because we've not got a stack of tight head props. But
do you not think that's even more reason to leave him at him?
I can see both sides. I can see one side
because you can train and you can train and you can train. All right, it's not tier 1 nations we're going to play, but surely this is a great opportunity to give some of the tight heads game time. Well, not just tight heads, probably 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think actually when you look at hooker, George Turner's obviously away to Japan, so there's an argument there. Can you pick him? Do you pick him? Ewan Ashman, I think, has had a pretty good season for Edinburgh, scored a load of tries. But Johnny Matthews, I know everybody wants Johnny Matthews to have more than one cap against Romania at the World Cup, and he will get that, I'm sure, this summer. But Johnny
Not
Matthews,
just one cap, but he scored a try as well.
Exactly. I mean, do you expect anything less? But, Johnny's the other side of 30 now as well. So Gregor Hiddleston has had a good season. I think he was somebody that's worth a look. Angus Fraser's had a good season. He might be worth a look. I think you've got to develop the depth in some of these positions, but it might not be the right time to chuck them all in at once because, like, everybody will remember the last time we played America over there, we got beat. And like after the Six Nations, I'm sure Gregor will want to avoid any slip-ups here. Like, I think we want 4 good performances, 4 pretty convincing wins. So I can see both sides. I can see an argument that says we take one squad that's a wee bit stronger for the first half, and then we send some of those guys home when we play I want to call them real tier 2, but Chile and Uruguay will be a step down from America and Canada.
You reckon that because Canadian men's rugby is all over the place?
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's funny because I think America is definitely the toughest game, but the Canadians have just been a bit of a mess for a while now. So it's a funny tour actually. I think it'll be better for us than a lot of people think. I think it's an ideal opportunity to go and say, do you know what, we're going to cap 10 guys who maybe aren't on everybody's radar, some exiles, folk that are dual qualified. Tell you somebody else that I think they might look at is Dylan Richardson, the Sharks forward, because he plays 6 for them, which is their open side, but he also plays hooker. And like we've seen before when Stuart McInally did it, that actually that can be quite handy in like a World Cup squad or, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's in that mix and does a bit of both.
Aye, it's I don't know where I sit on it. To me, if it's full cap internationals, you got to go well. I find the whole I get development, and that's what I started this conversation with about who's going. But when you think of the number of top quality players in years gone by, and maybe I need to get over myself a bit, that that never got full caps, and guys who have just been awarded caps in the last 18 months due to the work that Graham Law and his team have done to get this going. It just makes me feel a bit sad that we not give them away. That's not fair, but you know what I mean. You're getting a cap because those two have been left at home, but for development and for Scottish rugby, and we've already said there's too many scrum halves at Glasgow, so how do they get to play? Well, here's a chance, right, son? You're getting to play for Scotland and you're playing an international, you're away, you're on tour. What an amazing opportunity to learn and grow and become better and be coached, the Scotland way, and test yourself in an environment that none of them know anything about these four places, really.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it was an amazing offer for those that are selected. It'll be an amazing opportunity. And actually, for some of the young guys, like Gregor said in Dublin, there would be guys in this squad who might not have played much pro rugby. So for them, it's a great opportunity to go and just be a total sponge, learn as much as they can. And some of them might not get caps. Some of them, it might be a learning experience. But what a way to do it in North and South America for 4 weeks. The weather looks pretty good. I'm sure they'll enjoy them.
Typical Scotsman. I'm not actually that bothered where I go, as long as it's sunshine.
As long as it's sunny, but not too sunny for somebody of my complexion.
I know. You need to have hat, snood, factor 50, sunblock, the whole thing on. I think it's going to be interesting. I can't see what direction of travel they're going, and I think we spoke off air before we hit record on some boys might go for a bit of it and then come back. See, I'm not even sure how I feel about that, and I love everybody loves a tour, let's face it, but the going away and knowing you're there for the whole time, the thought you're going for a week and then it's chips and ham, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that situation either. But so your predictions, 4 wins?
Yeah, 4 wins. I want to say four comfortable wins, 4 good performances. I think that's the key, that we've just got to see. Said this for so long about Scotland. The level between their best performances and their worst just has to be closed. So, like, they've just got to hit a much more consistent level. And if they can do that in these games and then take it into what are actually 4 pretty tasty looking games in the autumn, then that's a box ticked. And just, I'm sure some guys will get opportunities, there'll be caps, but let's avoid any absolute banana skins, because we would be the laughing stock of world rugby, I think, if we lose some of these games. And that's no disrespect to the countries we're going to, but I think if we choose to leave a load of players at home, we've got to do that safe in the knowledge that actually we're probably likely to win these games.
Yeah, I think you're right about that level of consistency. You need to establish your sort of baseline, and then you need to bank on, right, 10 to 12 of my players are always going to play at that level.
Yeah.
And hopefully 3 will excel. But if 3 drop below that, then we can kind of carry it because we've met this level. And that's where consistency and selection can be important, which is what we're completely thrown out here with this tour, that we don't actually know what it's going to be. Listen, my man, we're almost there, but we were keen to just mention and talk about any other business. We've taken care of Edinburgh and Glasgow, and no doubt at some point we'll get to Clubland and various things that are going on there as we move through this. But this week, I'm never going to forget. I've got a lot of those moments of where I was when I found out. I remember when I got the message to say that Doddy had passed away, and I was walking along the street in Cork and Ireland, and my phone started going mental with folk messaging me to say, "Mate, have you seen that Rob Burrows has passed away?" There's been unbelievable tributes to him, and I have to admit I've not been able to bring myself to watch the BBC documentary about him yet, here in the back of my neck standing up. But not just rugby, sport, the England football at St James's Park paid respect, rugby league, obviously, rugby union, it's been all over the TV. It's been quite a week.
Yeah, I think like you, I was in the house on the weekend when my phone started going, and you see that the sad news that Rob Burrow had passed away at 41, but what a legacy I think he's left to rugby league, firstly, because let's not forget he was an incredible rugby league player, and actually should, in a game of giants that is folk knocking seven bells out each other for 80 minutes, he was saying just a sensational player. And for most folk that would have been their legacy and that would have been it. But like a bit like Doddy, I think it gets lost a bit that Doddy was actually a world-class rugby player.
Yeah, I mentioned that a lot.
And, Rob, to have done what he's done since his diagnosis, and for his family on Monday to be at the groundbreaking of the MND Centre in his name in Leeds, the day after he had passed away, was just shows the strength of his family and his, Kevin Sinfield, obviously his closest friend. So yeah, I think a sad week, but I think a week to remember what they've, both Doddy and Rob, and obviously Ed Slater's now in the same fight with MND and others, have actually set out to do, in that they want to find a cure for this. You've done a lot of work for My Name's Doddy over the years, but you know as well as anybody that cure is getting closer, but the work just has to continue, and I think that now has to be Doddy's legacy and now Rob's as well.
Aye, it's unfortunate it's still a million miles away, but it's closer than it was, and I see the rugby league final at the weekend is going to kick off at 3:07 in tribute to Rob, rather than 3:00. And then at 7 minutes in, there's going to be there's only one Rob Burrow chant. Here's my back, my neck are away again. Mate, yeah, sad, but as you say, the legacy has to continue, and that was what they wanted. And it's a weird thing to be able to be thinking about so many other people and other things rather than yourself when you've caught yourself in the worst possible circumstance.
That's it, exactly. And I think it's testament to the character of people like Rob, people like Doddy, what they've set out to be so positive and actually inspire other people who are going through the same horrific condition, but with less, means to help fight it or raise awareness than they have through their profiles and through their careers. So, yeah, I think, by the way, what an occasion that Challenge Cup final. I mean, the Challenge Cup final is up there with the biggest anyway. And in this week, that'll be an incredible occasion. That'll be for all the Scottish listeners and viewers. If anybody was at Murrayfield in 2017 when Doddy and his kids brought the ball out, I think Saturday's Challenge Cup final at Wembley might be the rugby league equivalent of that, as they pay tribute to Rob.
Yeah, unreal. Okay, let's change the tune. We're almost there, mate. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks very much for having me. Hopefully I'll get to come back. But I've been to Murrayfield a lot, my man. I saw the Claymores American football team win the World Series. I've watched Hibs play Barcelona. I've watched Scotland win silverware. I've seen them at their darkest days when it was empty on a Sunday afternoon as we played Italy. But this Friday night, my man, I am a Swiftie.
I don't know what to say, Bruce. I don't know.
I can't wait. As soon as I hang up this, I'm away to make more bracelets to swap with folk. Taylor Swift at Murrayfield on Friday night. I will see you all there. I can't wait. It's going to be magic. I have actually silenced him. He's got no idea what to say.
There is a man with an eclectic taste in music and sporting interests. Eh?
Can't wait. Although I'm gutted because supposedly she played Love Story at one of her other gigs and she's not going to be playing it, and that's my favourite Taylor Swift song. So I'm a bit gutted with that.
You can sing it on karaoke on your way in. Do
you know when Callum played it at the Hive, it was for an injury break, and we got through the chorus twice because the injury. I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but to stay doing long enough to get through 2 sets of the chorus for Taylor Swift Love Story, I was so happy. That was magic. And I even got to say, sing it, Hive.
Class. At least nobody will have to get injured for you to hear Taylor Swift singing. I'm glad that's pleased you. It's your Friday night. Friday night, I think I might be in in Ayr for the final of the Super Series.
Yeah, no, that'll be cool.
That'll be pretty interesting. An interesting way to see that competition conclude. But yeah, there might be a few more folk where you're going.
One or two. One or two, but Super Series. Let's talk about that next week, and we can do a bit of summary of that one from start to finish. My man, it's been a joy. Gavin Harper, the editor at Scotland Rugby News. You can subscribe for £1 for 6 months as your trial intro, or you can go £12 for 12 months. My name is Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped. His name is Gavin Harper from Scotland Rugby News. This has been your Scotland Rugby News podcast. We look forward to seeing and listening to you all again very, very soon. For now, farewell.